Okay, 4 o'clock, right on the nose. All right, let's jump right into this. This will be the probably if you've ever been on, well, if you've been on a call with me, you know, but if you've never been on a Zoom call or any kind of presentation or anything with me, it is probably the least hyped thing you'll ever hear because I don't really deal in hype very well. So hopefully it doesn't put you to sleep. There's some really cool stuff I'm going to share with you, but you know, I mean, as far as getting excited, I'm not gonna try to excite you. Um, when I've done a presentation like this a handful of times, probably 3 or 4 times, and I usually kind of go through this. Like I have an outline that I'm going to go through. I have some notes. There's a couple of things I'm going to read, but mostly I'm going to spend probably, I don't know, 15 or 20 minutes doing that, and then the rest of it's just answering questions. I've got a bunch of questions that are common ones that come up that I'll just go ahead and answer, and then if you have questions in addition to that, I'll stay as long as anybody wants to ask questions. There will not be a pitch. If you want to be part of this program, you have to, reach out to me via email. I'm not going to, post a link on here and say, go buy it now. I just doesn't work that way. So the way I usually start this is to tell you a quick story because I don't think that most of the people who will be watching this know anything about my background. I've been doing direct response marketing since 1988, so a long, long time, all different kinds of advertising, pretty much everything that's come down throughout the years, including, direct mail and magazines and newspapers and radio and TV and all the various forms of internet advertising. And the one thing that always kind of keeps coming back for me is direct mail, because direct mail is one of those things that it comes and goes in terms of popularity, but in terms of its the things that are positive that are positive about it never go away. And so I've spent, many, many years doing like direct response online. In fact, my very first thing I ever did online was a massive success. And so I thought, oh, I'll never have to do direct mail. I'm just going to stick with the online world. And, that's kind of ebbed and flowed throughout the years. But I usually start by saying I was running a business in 1999, and I had a bunch of salespeople that worked for me. We sold health discount cards and vacation discount cards, and we sold them on the phone, and we sold them I would do direct mail that would get people to call, and then my salespeople would, sell them what the product that we were selling. When I was doing that, I did not believe, because of my background in doing direct response, I didn't believe that you could get a really good lead to call you without a what would be called a full mail package, meaning either a 4-page letter, 6-page letter. Sometimes we use pamphlets with a cover letter. They were always in an envelope, and so that's how we did it, and it worked well. Because I did it that way, I had a printer friend that I had a very good relationship with because we spent a lot of money on printing to do direct mail. And one time I was in his office, I went in to pick up a bunch of our stuff so that we could do our mailing. And I saw over in the corner while I was waiting for him a pallet full of postcards. And obviously I know what a postcard is, but I just thought, do those work? And I kind of like quickly, glanced over what was on the postcards, and I noticed it wasn't a direct competitor to what we were doing, but it was in the same vein. And so I was sort of intrigued. I asked the printer, I said, his name is Bruce. I said, Bruce, do postcards really work? And he goes, well, you see that pallet over there? And there was he pointed at it, and I go, yeah. And he goes, did you see the three behind it? And I was like, what? There's 4 pallets over there, 4 pallets, like stacks and stacks of postcards. He said, yeah, he comes in on that's a regular order for him. I don't know, I can't remember if he said weekly or monthly, but it was like this guy was mailing hundreds of thousands of postcards. And so I said, huh, well, that's interesting. I mean, I already knew that the postage rate for postcards was a lot less than what we were spending. Obviously, the printing was a lot less, so it'd be a lot less expensive to do. So I went back to the office, and we kept doing what we were doing. But in the meantime, I decided I would try to figure out how to use postcards. Long story short, it took us like 3 or 4 tries to get the messaging that we would put on the postcard to have the same effect as the full letter that we were sending. But we did finally figure it out. Once we figured that out, it allowed us to scale much quicker because it was less expensive to put in the mail. Conversion was nearly the same. And and it didn't take nearly as long to do because basically the postcards are already printed, just needed postage on them. Where the other ones, you had to put them, you have to send it to a letter shop and have the whole thing put together. So that was my introduction to postcards, and like that business did phenomenal. Um, because of that, multiple people over the next 3 or 4 years came to me, people that I knew, like business colleagues, came to me and said, "Hey, would you put together the same kind of lead gen slash, direct mail program for us? We sell XYZ." Yeah, okay, sure. For a percentage, I'll do it. And I did that for four different people selling four different kinds of products, but they all kind of had to meet a certain criteria. This is going somewhere, but all of these products were selling. I mean, every one of these campaigns was selling products that were under a few $100s. I think the most expensive one was like $400. Most of them were under $100. So using a postcard to generate that lead was a no-brainer. Like you didn't need a lot of like explaining to get the phone call. So between those four businesses, and one was much bigger than the others, but between those four businesses over the next 3 or 4 years, and I was getting residuals from these, they ended up doing millions and millions. I mean, one of the businesses was doing $20 million a year in sales, all from postcards. And so I thought, and people would ask me all the time, like, well, how do you do this with postcards? How does, and so I had developed this sort of, I don't want to call it a system. I had developed a sales funnel that worked really well. And I didn't know how to do anything other than that, which was as long as your product meets these criteria and you have salespeople that can take the calls and the price point is right and the lists are available. So it was a handful of criteria. But as long as you had those criteria, I could set up a postcard campaign that would basically just generate money at will. It wouldn't work for other type, or I shouldn't say it wouldn't work. I never tested it on other types of products other than these like narrow category, mostly info products or products that had, not something heavy that you had to ship, things that had really high markup. Because of everybody asking me to do that, I back in 2008, I put together a course called Postcard Profits. And some people that watch this may have heard of it years ago. We ended up selling 30,000 copies of that course back in 2008, 2009, and made a lot of people a lot of money who took those processes that I set up that I shared in that course and used them. But they were very narrow. Like if you email me, I give you that course for free today. The principles of the direct mail stuff is still all relevant. The way that we sold it would probably not work the same way today as it did then because we used like recorded voicemail that would then at the end you could press one and it would take you to a salesperson. If you're using today's technology, I would set the funnel up completely different. Anyway, did that for several years and I decided that I wanted to get into the supplement business. And so started a supplement company. Friend came to me and said, "Hey, I'd like to invest in your company." I said, "No, I don't want to take any investment. We're growing this." And he talked to me over the course of about 6 months and finally talked me into it. So we basically, he wanted to invest and be the majority owner. He put up a bunch of money, he and his partner. And I have a supplement company that we were probably about 2 years into it. And they had a connection with a private equity group that if we hit all of these numbers, they would buy it for lots and lots of money. I thought this was going to be the last thing I'd ever have to do, and I'd just be sitting on the beach in the sunset. Then he and his partner, they were a couple, they got into a spat, and turns out I didn't realize it was actually her money, not his money. And because they were 51% owners, she had her attorneys basically lock up the whole business. And so that kind of takes us to like 2018. And so in 2018, I've told this story many times, but in 2018, I didn't know what I was going to do. It was the summer. I really had no income coming in. I had a little bit of savings left, about 3 months worth of savings left, and I had no idea what I was going to do next. So one of the things that I did right away is I made a list. I said I didn't want to work more than a couple hours a day. I was really tired of grinding. The supplement business, I had been working more hours a week than I had worked in a long, long time. Number two, I needed to make at least $250,000 a year to comfortably cover my bills and put some money away. Number three, I didn't want to do something where I had to be available 24/7. No more answering emails, texts, and calls except on my time. So like in my schedule. Number four, I didn't have very much money to work with, so it couldn't be expensive to get started, no more than a few $1,000s. And number five, I did not want to manage a team, so no employees. I had gone through that earlier in my career, and then with the supplement business, we had a good sized team that I was managing. And although they were great people, I was just kind of done managing people. I wanted to be basically a freelancer. And so a few weeks into trying to figure out what I was going to do for the next move, I got a text from someone I hadn't talked to for a while. We knew each other because he'd gone through that postcard course that I taught. And he was one of my students from back then. He asked me if I had a few minutes to talk. We get on the phone. After a little bit of back and forth, he asked if I'm still doing direct mail at all. And I said, well, not really. Why do you ask? He says that he wants to pay me to put together a direct mail campaign for his consulting business. I asked him a couple questions about who his ideal clients were and a few things about how he was getting clients now. And then I said, sure, I can put something together for you. And he says, well, how much would you charge me? And he had just got through telling me that he was charging for his services. He was charging $5,000 was kind of the minimum consulting for his clients. So that was the first number that popped in my head. I said, for $5,000, I'll put the whole thing together and you won't have to lift a finger. Great. He says, when can you start? And here's the thing. I wasn't 100% sure it was going to work because even though I had mailed millions of postcards and had all these successes, I had never sold something for $5,000 using direct mail. Um, I taught a course on postcards. I built those big businesses, got one of them to $20 million a year. But this was definitely different. When I'd used them before, I'd only used that funnel I was talking about where you generate a phone call, people call a recorded voicemail. The voicemail is basically like an audio version of a video sales letter that you see today. And at the end, they would press one and go to a salesperson. And again, like I said before, I had never sold anything for over $500. And my friend was selling $5,000 consulting packages. So the part of why I said yes is he already had an ad that was working for him. He had an email follow-up process that was working for him. So I figured that all I really had to do is I had to come up with a list and I had to be able to adapt what he was like his ads that he had now for print, right? How hard could that be? So he gave me the ad. He gave me the emails that he was using once he'd already proven to work for him. And then I called a business-to-business list broker. So you'll learn about that later. But a business-to-business list broker is a broker that can get names of certain types of businesses, and you can give them all kinds of criteria. Like, I want roofing contractors who, do business in Denver and have been in business for 5 years and have at least $1 million in revenue. Like you can get very specific with what kind of list you want. So I called the business broker, told him what I needed. Then I took my friend's winning ad and I adapted it to go on a postcard. It took me about 2 hours to do that. And then I just uploaded the postcard and the mailing list to an online print and mail service. So I didn't have to touch the mail or anything. And I told him right off the bat, especially because I wanted to make sure that it was going to work before we, blow a bunch of his money. I said, let's test small. So we mailed 1,000 postcards. It cost him, I don't know, $600 or $700, including printing and postage. And the list, I'm saying 600 or 700 because I don't remember exactly what the list was. The list is a variable in there. In the first 10 days, he got 26 responses from the mailing. He signed up 2 new clients. So he brought in $10,000 and he only spent 650. And obviously he was ecstatic about that. 6 years later, or now it's more than 6, almost 8 years later, and he's still mailing 2,000 to 3,000 postcards a month. So after that experience, I had a couple of other people. He told a couple of people. I had a couple of other people reach out to me and ask if I could do that for them. And I started thinking about, like, at first, these were just one-offs. Like, I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do for a living, right? And at some point, I thought, huh, maybe I could just do this. Like, maybe I just set up mail campaigns for business owners. Be a great little business for me. And I just set up a winning campaign for my friend. So fast forward to today, I now, and have been for since 2018, I set up 1 to 3 simple campaigns a month, make a fantastic income, working less than 10 hours a week total. Usually it's, 6 or 8 hours a week. And I've put together a simple mail campaign for myself so that, like, after the first 6 months or so, referrals stopped coming in. Like, I couldn't just live on referrals. I needed to make sure that there was, a steady flow of leads. And so I set up a mail campaign for myself that gets me new clients on autopilot, basically. And that way I don't have to worry where the next one's coming from. So about a year ago, I started teaching people how to do the same thing that I'm doing, and how to go, what clients to go after, how to go after them easily, how to get them to call you and ask you to set up direct mail campaigns for them, how to get them to happily give $7,500 to set up a campaign for them, and then how to actually set up their campaigns without any prior experience. Basically, how to run a great little side hustle that makes a nice full-time income while working 6 or 8 hours a week, or maybe if you're really slow, 10 or 12 hours a week. So that's the basic idea of the genesis of how this started. And I'm going to kind of tell you about, like, how this works and, all of that kind of stuff. So really the business itself boils down to getting clients and servicing clients, right? And so the servicing of the clients is something that I want to make sure that you know how to do, because getting the clients, you get a client and you've told them you know how to do this, you need to be able to know how to do this. Well, that part is pretty simple, because most of the businesses that we work with, and I say we because I'm including myself and students I've taught to do this, most of the clients that we work with are clients who already have an existing business, an existing winning ad campaign, usually existing email campaigns, and we're basically just adapting their own ads that they're using, the digital ads, Facebook ads and whatnot, and we're adapting them for direct mail, usually a postcard. I do keep saying postcards. Sometimes I do have campaigns where you're doing a letter campaign. It kind of depends on the offer and the type of business, but most of the time it's postcards. Super, super simple. There's 3 types of businesses that I can teach you how to go after. Now, these are not the only kinds of businesses that you can work with. I've worked with businesses that don't fit into these categories, but usually they come by referral. When I'm reaching out and sending direct mail to businesses, it's one of these 3 types. It's either e-commerce. So in e-commerce, I've had clients across the spectrum that you can't even, like, things that you wouldn't even expect that are an e-commerce store. But, like, I've had hearing aid client. I've had clients that sell supplements, skin cream, CBD products, because they're hard to do with digital advertising. So e-commerce is one category. They're great because in that category, I'm going to just give you a quick little snippet about why each one of these business categories works really good. But e-commerce is great because most businesses most people who have a store, a Shopify store, WooCommerce, or anything like that, they are, if they're advertising, and I teach it, we only go after ones who are already spending money on advertising. We look at their Facebook ads library. But if they're spending money on advertising, most of them, and I think this is a shock to some people, do not make money when they sell something to somebody the first time. It's usually they hope they break even, and sometimes they lose a little bit because they're basically buying a customer that they can then send emails to get them to come back and buy more. And when they come back to buy more, that's where their real profit is. I have a client right now that when I started working with her, one of the questions I ask, I teach you all of the questions I ask, but one of the questions I asked is, well, how much can you spend to get a customer? And she said, well, we're spending $80 to get a customer now. I said, well, what's your average order value? She said, well, it's like 45 or 50. I said, so you're willing to go in the hole? Because obviously it's not even covering your ad costs, and plus you have a cost of product. She goes, yeah, we know all our numbers. We break even at month 2, and by month 3, we're in profit, and most of our customers stay for 12 or 13 months. Oh, okay, well, that's a great business, right? So one of the reasons it's great to go after e-commerce businesses is because they're relying on email. And this is the dirty little secret. Most of them are only getting a 20% or less email open rate. What that means is they're getting customers that they're paying for, and then they're trying to do that follow-up, and only 20% of them are actually even seeing the message that they're doing the follow-up with. And they're still making money as a business. So the question we ask them is, great, so what if the other 80% were opening the emails? Would you be making more money? Because when we send postcards, it's 100% open rate. There is no open rate on a postcard. It's 100%. And the lights start to turn on and they go, oh my God, oh, well, what would that look like? And we have to do a little bit of math with them because it's not apples to apples. Email doesn't cost them any money per send to send it out. There's a monthly fee, but there's no per send. Where with postcards there is. So we have to take the money that the extra money they would make by getting those 80% to see the message and subtract what it costs to send the postcards. And then we come up with a number. And if that number is one that makes sense to them, not to me, but if it makes sense to them, they go, great. How do we get started? But like, how does this work? And they just, I mean, it's like, I don't even have to sell them. It's basically math. If we do that little bit of math and we say, okay, you would have made this, and after you subtract the what it costs to send the postcards, if that number is not something they'd be happy with, they just say, I don't think this would work. Or you can say that to them, I don't think this would work. And you move on. Next. Like there is no convincing. If it's going to work, it's really a math problem. So e-commerce is the first one. The second one would be info product sellers. So people that have educational courses online, everything from real estate stuff to make money stuff to I've worked with a client that sold crypto stuff, fitness things, any of the categories online that you know that are selling info products. There are a couple of caveats. The ones you can have the most success with are ones that have at least $1,000 product or more. A product that's at least $1,000 or more. So a lot of the ones that I work with will have, $100 or $50 product, and they might have a $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 product that they're doing as an upsell later. Those are perfect because they're generating a whole bunch of customers, and then those customers are not seeing all their emails. And so when we send them mail, we can actually convert a lot of those for them. So info product sellers would be the second category. And then the third category is one that requires a little bit more marketing savvy. So those first two, e-commerce and info product sellers, I usually recommend that anybody that's brand new to marketing or has never really done, it doesn't matter about direct mail, but if you've never done any kind of marketing and you're worried about being able to come up with the copy and the angle and all that kind of stuff, I would stay away from B2B and I would go with e-commerce or info product sellers because in 99% of the cases with them, you are going to be using their already proven advertising. You don't have to come up with the advertising. You're also going to be in 99% of the cases mailing to their existing customers because that's where the money is for them. And so you don't even have to be good at list picking. There are a few things that you need to do about picking the right segments of their list, which I'll teach you. But for the most part, if you're brand new, and I've had students go through this who've had zero marketing experience and get an e-commerce client and they're up and running and the client thinks they're a genius. By the time they've gone through our course, they are a genius to that client. B2B is the third one. B2B, you actually have to be able to have a little bit of marketing skills because 9 times out of 10, they don't have fully fleshed out and formed advertising. A lot of the B2B businesses are working off referrals. And because most of what they sell is big ticket from one business to another business, like SEO services or Facebook ad agency services, or like I've worked with one that was selling marketing services to power washing companies. Like they run the gamut, but basically the thing is if they're selling from a business to a business, 9 times out of 10, they don't have existing ads. Some of them do. So that's why I leave that 1 out of 10 does. But the ones that don't, most of their business is coming from referral. And if it's coming from referral, you're going to have to be able to figure out how to take the sales process they have. So if I'm working with somebody that's B2B and and they're doing everything off referral, the first thing I do with them is I say, great, do you have a salesperson? Well, yeah, Jim, I guess, takes the calls here in the office and he'll walk somebody through it. Okay, great, Jim. If somebody calls you as a referral, what do you say to them? How does that process work? And I basically just listen to him, let him tell me how they do it. And I take notes. And one of the cheats that I do now is I'll take those notes and I'll pop them into Manus or ChatGPT and have it kind of spit back out like sort of a starting point of like, well, this is maybe what I would do with a postcard. So I'm not going to give you all the tricks here tonight, but there's some really cool things you can do to help you. But I would say that for B2B, you need to have a little bit of experience. But if you do, they're great because they usually have a price point of what they're selling that's really high with a really high margin, which means even if we mail, like with the example of my friend that I told you about the story at the very beginning, we mailed 1,000 postcards. He only got 2 sales. So if you looked at it from conversion, it was only a 0.2%, which is horrible from a conversion standpoint. But from a dollars to dollars standpoint, it was fantastic. He spent $650. He brought in $10,000. So that's the only thing that mattered. And with B2B, you have those big margins like that. So that's why they're a great client, but you have to have a little bit of savvy to work with them. I'll walk you through some of those. But so what do we do for these clients? So we can do new customer acquisition. So that's like the holy grail that they all think they want. Oh, I just want to get new customers at scale. Okay, we can do that for certain categories if lists are available. That's actually the hardest thing to do. And so I don't usually have anybody start there, whether they're my client or if I've got a student that's working with a client. I say, listen, let's see if we can do some of their back end selling first, like selling to their own existing list. Because if you can get them a win there, a very quick win, the beautiful thing is now they're sold on direct mail and they'll let you do testing on the other stuff and you can charge them for a second campaign. But we do acquisition, so that's new customers. We do follow-up, so that would be kind of like I talked about with the e-commerce where you're selling their existing customers other things. And then we are also doing upselling, reviving subscriptions, anything. Basically, we want to get them a win quickly because that justifies what they paid you and then gets them to pay you for other campaigns in a nutshell. So how do we do all this? Let me share my screen. I'll show you kind of like what the training looks like. If I can here. So there's 6 modules. And I used to teach this up until now. I've always taught this in a 6-week live class. Part of why I'm doing this call today is because I've made some changes to that, and I'll tell you what those are here when we get a little further in. But this is the outline for what you're going to learn in the the program itself. Module 1, basically, you're going to have to go through some other videos that are in the course, preferably more than once, because that's going to give you sort of a background on postcards. That's about 2 hours or so. We'll walk through how to best, get a hold of me, because part of what you get with this program is you got access to me via phone, text, email. We've got a once-a-week live class. We'll go into the 3 types of businesses. I'll go in a lot more depth than I just did now. I kind of gave you the surface level version of like the types of businesses and also the pluses and minuses of each, because there's none of them that are perfect. There's some that are good for some things and some that are good for others. So you'll learn the pluses and minuses for each one. I'll talk to you about, how you charge. First of all, I'm not ever going to preach that you should do everything the way I'm doing it. If you want to do it the way I'm doing it, it's the only way I know how to teach it. I can give you lots of input about how I do it. But I've had students come through this course because now I've been teaching it for a year. I've had students come through this course who do things slightly different than I do because they have a different tolerance in business. But we're going to discuss flat fee versus recurring for your services. I have a very strong opinion about that. Module 2, we're going to go through the creative. So basically, this is adapting their existing ads from digital to print. There's some homework in this section of the module. This section of the program. What to mail when. Well, we will learn about like when to mail a letter, when to mail a postcard, when to mail lumpy mail. Lumpy mail is basically any mail that has something else in it besides paper. Like, so you can put stuff in it that gives it some form. Some people call it 3D mail. We'll talk about the formats and sizes of each type of mail. I used to only use one size of postcard, and I've changed my mind in the last 9 months because I've had some really great success using a different type. We'll go over that. I'll talk about the print and mail vendors that I use. I don't get paid by them. I don't get any referrals. You can use whoever you want, but I do have two that I use. If I find a better one, I'll move to another one because I don't have any loyalty to them. But I have two that I've used for many, many years for one of them, and the other one I've been using for about 3 years, and I use them for two different types of mail. We'll talk about the tools for doing the creative. One of the questions I often get is like, oh, do I have to have graphic art skills? No. If you have them, it will save you a little bit of time. But I've had many students go through here who get a client, have no graphic skills, and basically all they have to do is they have to be able to describe what they want. That you have to have, which you'll learn in this creative part. But if you can describe it, you can have somebody on Fiverr actually do the graphic layout and make it ready for print for, anywhere from 15 to 35 bucks. So you don't have to have any graphic skills. Module 3, this is mailing lists. This is not probably, it is the most crucial part. And it's the most crucial part, doesn't matter what kind, like I said, I've been doing direct response marketing for a long, long time. The audience is everything. Who's seeing the message? And with direct mail, that's the list. So we'll learn about using clients lists, their existing list, and like what the best practices are there and how to get the best out of what they have. We'll learn how to source lists for new customer acquisition, which is different. That's you going out and renting lists on their behalf. And we'll learn like the tools for sourcing and cleaning the lists and all that stuff. Module 4 is when we start to get into the exciting part. We go to who to look for, how to find them, how to qualify them, what to ask them. And as I've been teaching this course, I just finished up the 12th time that I've taught the course. And this 12th time was the first time that we introduced some new tools. The 11 times before that, we didn't. And those people I'm retroactively giving them the module that I just taught in this new one. But in the initial one, there's like 3 tools that we use for going out and sourcing your prospects that you're going to mail to, 50 letters at a time, 100 letters at a time. That's all gotten a whole lot easier with AI. And I haven't really bought into the AI hype for the last couple of years as everybody's been talking about it. But now for doing the list research part of it, there are 2 tools that I use a lot, and they're working really, really great for helping you. It basically, in the email I sent you, I said that the changes to the program are to make it faster, easier, and more affordable. And here's one of the things. The faster part of it is, well, we'll get to that. I'm jumping ahead, sorry. In Module 4, we go through the intro to getting clients. Module 5 is, so you've got a prospect to call, now what? So you're going to have template letters. I'm going to walk you through how to use the template letters that you're sending to them that get them to call. When they call from one of those template letters, they are pre-sold. They are not calling to find out about direct mail. They're calling to find out whether direct mail will work for them because the letter is that descriptive. It already walked them through and basically got them thinking about the numbers. And really, they're reaching out to you to say, well, I don't know if direct mail would work for me. It sounds great. Can we do some math, basically? So that letter is how to have them sold on direct mail before you talk to them. We'll walk through, I have a call outline that we use. It's not really a script because it's just an outline of questions and things that you need to ask them to be able to do the math. And then at the end, when they say, yeah, this sounds great, how do we get started? I send them an agreement. You'll have a template of my agreement that I use that you basically just change a few things on it to fit them. You get an agreement of terms. You send that to them via email. They say yes, and then you send them an invoice. And we talk about payment considerations. I can give you a couple of little bits about payment considerations here. Is one of the things that people always ask me is like, wow, $7,500. What if they ask for a split payment? I don't offer them split payments. If they have to do a split payment, they're probably going to be a problem when it comes to paying for the mailing. By the way, you're not paying for any of the mailings. When a client pays you, they're paying you a service to set up their campaign, and they're still paying for everything. This is no money out of your pocket once the client's engaged you. And they, well, why would they do that? No different than if they were hiring a Facebook ad agency. They pay the agency fee and they still pay Facebook the advertising fee. It's the same thing here. So they're paying for the mailing and they're paying you to do the work to set everything up and source it and all that stuff. So payment considerations, one of them, I'm not going to go through all of them today, but one of them is I don't do split payments. If they have to do split payments, they're probably going to be a problem client. So I usually say no to them unless there's very, very special circumstances. And then in module 6, it's basically like, okay, great. I've learned how to do the work. I've learned how to get a client, and the clients are signing up now. Well, now what do I do? So we'll walk through fulfillment, sort of the order and sequence. You've learned what to do, but I'll show you, okay, so what do I do? Do I order the list first? Do I set up the, all of that stuff? And one of the things that you'll hear me talk about all the way through the program is managing expectations. And this managing expectations is a big deal because early on, when I started doing this, I didn't do it and it bit me a lot. And so now I always manage expectations. What does that look like? If I have a client where they call and we do that simple math with them, and in their mind, let's say that I say to them something like average response rate to cold mail. Let's say it's for customer acquisition. Average response to cold mailing across all industries is 2.3%. If you get a 2%, that's 20 orders per thousand. For mailing 1,000 postcards, it costs anywhere from 650 to maybe 850 at the most. The variance is in the amount of the list costs and also how many you're sending because they give you a better price if you're mailing more. If it's 650 to 850 per thousand and you get 20 sales and they do the math and they go, oh my God, if we did that, we would get, $5,000 for every single profit for every single thousand that we mailed. Can we mail 100,000 next week and I could make a 500,000? And they start like doing this math. They go, whoa, 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 whoa. No, let's back it down. And that's what I mean by managing expectations. You don't let them go running away with numbers that you know pretty well are not realistic. So you want to back that down. Another part of managing expectations, I have clients that don't really, I mean, they say it before they actually think about it, but we'll get everything done and I'll send them a text or an email because this is typically what I do is I send them a text or an email when the mailing has hit, like it's dropped in the post office because the print and mail vendor will tell me, hey, your mailing went out today. I'll tell them the mailing went out. And the very next day I'll get a call from them and they'll say, yeah, I'm watching. There's no traffic. Okay. Well, this is mail, so that means that it has to get in a truck and it has to go across the country and it takes 3 to 7, sometimes 10 days to deliver. Like, it's not, oh, right. So part of managing expectations is giving them a realistic timeline. So the timeline of the postal service, the timeline of what it's going to take you to put the thing together. I always make sure that I overestimate those things so that when I come back and I beat it, it's, I'm under promising and over delivering and then they love it. So managing expectations is one of the things we walk through all of this. So we talk about that when it comes to their conversions. We talk about that when it comes to their retention. We talk about that when it comes to timelines, all that stuff. But if you do a really good job of managing the client expectations, another example of that would be when I'm doing, especially a cold campaign, which is different than mailing to their existing list. But if I'm doing a cold campaign for somebody, I will say, listen, this list that I was been able to source sounds like it fits your avatar, your perfect customer, perfectly. But until we mail it, we don't know. And usually when we're doing a cold campaign like this, you've got to be willing to, take it 3 to 5 tries at this because that's how long it's going to take sometimes. Now, sometimes we get it on the first try, but I don't ever want to tell them that. I'm telling them, plan on 3 to 5 mailings, and they'll say, okay, well, what does that look like? Well, it's about $700 per thousand to mail 1,000 postcards. When we start off, if we've got a list nailed down, we only have to mail 1,000 at a time. If we're testing 2 or 3 lists, we might have to mail 1,000 each one of those. But 1,000 is kind of the minimum mailing you would do for them for mass mail, right? If they're doing lumpy mail, which is what we're doing when we're getting clients, you can mail a lot fewer. Lumpy mail, you can mail 50 or 100 and get a response because it's just a different ballgame. You got a higher response rate, or the engagement rate is much, much higher with lumpy mail. It's also more expensive to do. And then we're going to walk them through, and then you're going to learn like what to do if a mailing bombs, what to look at. There's a few things to look at, if it didn't work out. And then there's what to do if the mailing absolutely just hits it out of the park, it crushes. And then what to do about scaling, because this is another one of those areas where sometimes clients want to get away. They'll go, oh my God, we mailed 1,000 and I made $10,000. Let's mail 50,000 next week. No, that's just not smart. And so we walk them through that. So this is a basic outline for what I used to teach up until now. I've taught this across 6 weeks. The change that I've made, let me find my little share button here. The change that I've made to the program is we've added the AI tools module for being able to the way that I used to teach up until like 2 months ago to actually build our prospect list, to put 100 people on a list that you could mail or businesses on a list that you could mail and to research them thoroughly, if you're really doing it right, is going to take you a week to 10 days. Now with AI, I can do it in 19 minutes. So it radically changes that. Makes it a whole lot easier. You still have to do some checkup work on it. It's not perfect, but it gets 95% of the job done in a fraction of the time it would take to do. So that's number one. Number two, I used to deliver this program across 6 weeks. The way that I'm going to be doing it now is you'll get access to all of it immediately. I've got recorded versions of 2 of the full 6-week classes that I did. All of them are immediately available in the portal. So if you want to take 6 weeks to go across it, you can, or you can do it in a weekend and be done and have that part of it finished and be on to doing the homework and getting started. So it's faster, it's easier. There's still live weekly meetings, but now the live weekly meetings I'm introducing and adding in new things. Oh, here's what's working now, and it's keeping everything up to date. So once a week, you can either be there or not be there, but I'll be there for an hour or two, delivering new material and also answering questions and making sure that everybody's getting up to speed on everything they need to do to be able to get things going. So it's sort of the best of both worlds. You still get the live access, but the live access is not me now delivering the same material. Okay, I'm going to draw like a professor that has said the same lesson for 200 times. That part's recorded. The 2 that are recorded are really great. And the reason I gave you 2 is because when I'm delivering this, it's not it's an outline, but there's no script. And so different people in different classes ask different questions. And so it comes at you from different angles. So you basically get to see 2 module 1s, 2 module 2s, all the way through. So you can see it taught 2 different ways, or 2 different times, I should say. The way that I'm doing it now is you've got all of those immediately. The recorded classes are immediate. You get the weekly live group classes with me. This has always come with it, but you also get my Postcard Profits 2.0 course. There's some grounding material in there. You don't have to go through that whole course to get started, but eventually you probably should, because there's some good stuff in there. You do have to go through 2 of the workshop videos that are in there kind of as a prerequisite to getting going, because if you don't, you're going to want to go back to them anyway. You'll get all the template letters. So there are template letters for all the different types of prospects that we go after. And there's 2 versions for e-commerce. There's 2 versions for the info sellers, and there's just 1 version for the B2B. And that's because, well, I don't want to give away too much. There's 2 different ways that you can actually, there's 2 different types of mailings that you can do for prospecting. One of them is less expensive to mail. One of them is the one that's less expensive is a little bit more time intensive, or you can kind of skip to the headline. I've used both. I mean, these are letters I've tested over and over and over again and refined. So you get the template letters. You get the template for the agreement that I use with the client. But probably the most important part of all of this isn't, and I know it sounds so silly to say out loud, but this isn't just like a course. You've got unlimited access to me via phone, text, email to help you. I'll even close your first couple clients for you if you need me to. I do it all the time. It's fantastic. Did one last week. So that's what's in the program. So let me give you like the quick version of the Q&A that I've gotten. These are sort of the most popular questions that I've gotten. And then when I get done with that, if there's still more questions, I'll answer any questions that you guys have. What are the times for the live calls? Every Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern or 3 p.m. Pacific. The first of these live calls for this new version of the program start next Thursday, so a week from today. Those calls will also be recorded and added into the portal. So if you miss one, you can watch the recording of it. How soon are the recordings made available for the students who can't attend live sessions? Within an hour. What's the investment? Well, for the last year, as I've done this as a 6-week class, the investment has been $3,000. Now it's $19.95. And honestly, it feels like you actually get more because one of the questions I had when I was talking to someone about this earlier today is like, well, how many of those live calls can I attend? You can attend them as long as I'm doing them. You want to keep listening to them for a year? That's fine. Do you have a payment plan? No, but my payment processor does offer Klarna, Affirm, and Afterpay if you need a payment plan. When you say getting paid $5,000 to $7,500 per campaign to put together their campaigns, is that amount charged up front to the client? Yes, but they're only going to pay that if it makes sense. So one of the questions I've had over and over again, this is the question I get over and over again. Well, why would somebody pay you $7,500 to set that up? Well, because it's the type of businesses that we're targeting. We're going after a very specific revenue size business. They've got to be doing a minimum of $1 million a year in revenue. And we kind of target under 5 million. So somewhere between $1 million and $5 million in revenue. I'm hesitant to say the 5 million because when I'm building a prospecting list, that's what I do. But when I'm taking referrals, like I have one client right now that does $30 million a year. They're still a client. But why would somebody pay $7,500 to take it off their plate? They don't have time to do this. And money is not the issue. It's more revenue. So they're only going to do it if it makes sense with the math. When they get the letter, they read through it, they go, wow, that would be a great addition to what I'm doing. Let me see if this works. They call you, you walk through it. If it makes sense to them, they'll say, how quickly can we get started? I mean, I've had literally them say, like, is this something that you could be mailing tomorrow? And I go, whoa, back to managing expectations. No, not tomorrow, but we could get it done within 10 days. Okay. Another question I get is how tricky is the list sourcing? It depends entirely on the client. So first of all, my goal is always to mail their existing list. But in some cases, if a client in certain categories doesn't have an existing list, we'll need to source a list for them. I'm going to walk you through how to do all that. Most of it is just knowing which broker to talk to because there's a whole bunch of different list brokers for different categories. And so I'll walk you through all of that part. But when I say it depends entirely on the list, there are certain clients that might call, and when you tell them about mailing their existing list first, they blow you off and they go, yeah, that sounds great, but I really just want to get new customers. And then you tell them about it again, and then they go, no, I really just want to get new customers. If they're in a category where an obvious list is available, you can do cold customer acquisition for them. But if there isn't a very obvious list available, so for example, I had a guy call me with that same argument, and he was selling CBD products. And CBD products are very difficult to advertise online because a lot of the platforms won't take the advertising. So he was looking to direct mail and he wanted to get new clients, new customers. And I said, well, I don't know if I can get a list that would help you. I mean, I was just really straight with him right up front. I said, I don't know. I mean, if I can, what's the most you can pay to get a customer? He said, I could pay $60. And I said, okay. Cold acquisition, a good campaign will do 2%. So that's 2% would be 20 sales per thousand. 20 times 60, that's $1,200. And it costs about, $700, $800 to mail. Is that going to put you? Well, that won't put me in profit, but that's enough because I know what my lifetime value of a customer is. Okay. So I went out and called 2 list brokers. One of them directed me to somebody else that I had never heard of, and I ended up finding a list for him. Long story short, we got that campaign to where he was mailing 50,000 pieces a week and like had this totally transformed his business. His manufacturer, who was manufacturing all his products, came in and bought his business. So it was like a win all the way around. Um, Sorry, I got off track there. So what types of businesses would we target? E-commerce, B2B, info sellers. How hard is it, or what percentage of, these are questions that I'm just reading other people's questions that have come in. How hard is it, or what percentage of business owners you talk to become clients? If you're mailing the right kinds of prospects, the ones that you get to talk to, it's around 75% of the ones that we talk to. Again, it depends on their math. If you're mailing clients who have really low average order values and really low margins, and those are the prospects that are calling, you're going to have a lower percentage because we can't make the math work for them. But if you're picking the right kinds of prospects to go after, which is, if you haven't figured it out yet, that's kind of the secret to this, is like knowing who to go after. If you go after the right ones, and there are bazillions of them, like there's no way that any 100 of us could service them all. Actually, there's no way any 1,000 of us could service them all. But if you know the right kind to go after that fit the right, math criteria, when they call, it's about a 75% close rate. Are there any guarantees of the program? Well, I guarantee to teach you everything you need to know to get clients and to service them. And I will help close your first couple clients if you want me to, and you don't feel, especially if you don't feel comfortable doing it, but that's the guarantee. How do you help me close my first clients? Now, everybody gets kind of worried about this and like, oh, how's this going to work? When your prospective client reaches out to you, you can set up, some people use a book a call system where they just book a call and you get on the phone with them. Well, that's wonderful because now you know exactly when the call is and you invite me to the call. If you're not using a book a call, if you're having like you want them to call you or they're texting you or they're emailing you to find out more information, then you'll set the call, either a phone call or a Zoom meeting and just invite me to it. I'll be on the call with you. You introduce me as your colleague and I'll take it from there. I've done a bunch of these. It works great. How much time does this really take, Luke? I handle 3 to 5 clients per month. Now this month I only have 2 because I wasn't mailing leads the month before, 2 months before, but I can handle 3 to 5 clients a month working 6 or 8 hours a week. Remember, we're using online print and mail services. You're not putting their mailing, you're not doing physical work of putting their mailing together. You're taking their existing ad creative and making it work for print. If you're not doing the graphic layout, you're having somebody do that, like on Fiverr or Upwork, and then you're basically just coordinating the stuff with your client. Like, okay, get the list to me, and then I get it up and you upload it. How are we finding brands/companies that are going to even have the funds to hire us to run campaigns for 7,500? I walk you through exactly how to find the target businesses who meet the right criteria. And now that we're using AI tools, it's a lot easier. How do we do the outreach to the companies? I think I touched on that, but I'm going to show you how I use direct mail. I've had students come through this class in the last year who were too impatient to use direct mail and or their budget didn't fit. By the way, when I say use direct mail, you need to have probably somewhere around $600 or $800 set aside to be able to do your initial campaigns. That'll get the ball rolling for you. So you don't need a lot, but you need to have a little bit. So I've had people come through this that said, oh, I don't want to wait for that. And one of them has another business where he does a lot of cold outreach via DM and email, and that's how he does it. I couldn't do that because I don't like cold calling. It's just not my thing. But he's showed me a couple of ways. Like if you did want to do that, I could give you a couple of tricks that he's using. Right now, because I've been doing this for quite a while, and some of my earliest students are starting to really get this kicking in too. I would say 50% of my business, my new clients come from referrals, because once you start doing work for clients, they all talk to their other business associates. Oh yeah, man, I'm doing direct mail. It's fantastic. You should do it. Oh, who does it for you? Oh, Luke does it for me. Okay, great. So how do we do the outreach? Direct mail. Will us newbies run into situations where potential clients will ask for proof this works or want us to work for less as a trial run. I have not seen that ever happen yet. And the question that I usually ask back when somebody asks that question is, well, how will they know? When I mail to prospects, I'm unknown just like you. They don't know whether I can do anything. The letter that you mail them will demonstrate that you know what you're doing. After that, it's really just math. When they see that letter, I'm not going to show it to you because it's part of what you get with the thing. But the letter basically walks them through a process of showing them how to go do it for themselves. It demonstrates that you know what you're doing. And it also makes it sound like, oof, that's a lot. Can I just hire somebody to do it? And then they call you, right? So it has this double effect of making them want to do direct mail and then want to have somebody else do it for them. And it demonstrates that you know what you're talking about because the letter came from you and the letter is very detailed about how to do the direct mail campaigns. How much profit do we make on a client? And is that a monthly fee they're paying? Okay, so this is a question I get a lot. Again, like I said at the very beginning, you can charge however you like. I charge, it take me 15 minutes to give you the reason why. So I'll give you a short version. I used to do recurring billing. I used to do $2,500 a month. And when I charged $2,500 a month, what would happen is, like, hey, this is what it costs, and I will manage your direct mail campaigns. Put the campaign together, it starts working. And usually it's right around month 3 or month 4, I would get a phone call, and the call would, I'd be like, oh God, what's going on? Because normally it's all very hands off. And they'd say, hey, Luke, we want to make a couple of changes. I said, "Well, okay." And they've already like reported back to me like everything's going great with the direct mail. We love doing direct mail. It's fantastic, but I think we can handle this in-house now. And that happened like 3 or 4 times in a row. And it was getting to the point where I just noticed I wasn't keeping a recurring client beyond 3 or 4 months. And so instead of fooling myself into thinking, oh, I'm building up this residual income, I just got real and said, okay, if they're staying for 3 months, I'm going to charge what I would have normally charged for 3 months up front. And then I tell them right up front, there's no contracts, there's no long-term commitment to me. We get the campaign running. I'll turn it over to your staff in-house, and you guys can run it. And I didn't know if that was going to work, but immediately the first person I said that to, first business I said that to, they were like, "Oh my God, you can't believe how refreshing that is. All these agencies want to get you locked into a monthly fee." I'm like, I'm happy. Like, if I knew you were going to leave in 3 months anyway, I can get my work done that I'm going to do on your campaign usually in, 2 or 3 weeks and get paid the same amount of money, and I don't have to even stick around for the 3 months. That's a bonus. So if you want to do it as a recurring fee, you can try it. I've had 2 students come through here who had agency services already, and so they had clients that they were going to pitch this to as another add-on service, and they were already charging monthly. So they're like, "Look, we're just going to do recurring. It's your business. You can do whatever you want with it." I charge a one-time fee up front because it's an easier sale to the client, and it doesn't fool me into thinking that they're going to be around for a long time. So once in a while, once in a great while, one will get to the point where I'm turning it over to them, and they'll say, what would it cost us if we just wanted, like, we don't have anybody in-house that could do this. What would you charge us to just like do this campaign a couple times a month? And I usually just quote them a number that if they say yes, I'm happy to do it, but like it's not going to be an undercut. I usually will say, I don't know, for $1,500 or $2,500 a month, I'll do it. And if they say yes, I'll take it. And every single one of them that have said that, they've lasted for 4 or 5 months. So, but that's in addition to the front end fee that I've already got. So the question was, is that 100%, like how much profit do you make? The profit is all yours. You're not paying for any mailing. The only thing you're paying for is the little bit of prospecting that you're doing to get them to call you, right? So if you send out 100 letters and it costs you, $600-700 because you put a gift card in there or what, like I'm giving away some of the tricks here, but if you spend $600-700 to send out 100 of them and you get 2 or 3 clients, whatever those 2 or 3 clients paid you, you subtract the 600. That's the profit, I guess. When you're getting referrals, it's 100% profit. I already talked about, but I'll just, people always ask, what all is included in the program? So you get the video recordings and transcripts of the 6-part training series, and you get 2 versions of them, that were done at 2 different times. You get the weekly live group classes with me, the Postcard Profits 2.0 course, the template letters for the prospects, the agreement template, and then unlimited access to me via phone, text, email, and I'll even help you close your first couple clients for you if you need me to. So I'm going to open it up to Q&A here in a second. The other thing that I need to tell you is that, like I said, I'm not pitching this. I'm not saying, hey, you can go buy this. If you want a spot in the program, you have to email me. Email me and I'll send you the payment link. I want to say it's an invite only because I don't want somebody signing up for the course that's going to then go put it on a torrent site or something like that. So you've got to make yourself known. Send me an email and I'll send you a payment link if you want to be in the program. Okay. If there's anybody that has questions, you can either just open up your microphone or you can type them into the chat. I prefer if you open up the microphone, it makes it easier for everybody to hear it. Any questions that I didn't cover? Eric, go ahead.
Hey, Luke, how are you doing?
Doing great.
I have one question. What are the top 3 mistakes that we should avoid in 2026 to
Okay.
execute this?
Yeah, it doesn't really matter what year because it's kind of all the same. Actually, that's not true. The year thing would mean, and I hate to hype up AI, but if you're not using the AI tools, then you can use whatever ones you want. I'll show you how to use them. But if you're not using the AI tools to do the prospect list building, you're taking way more time than you need to. But the 2 biggest challenges that I see, basically, I can say this. Everything in this program, the challenges all come down to building that list, the list of the people that you're going to send mail to. And here's what I usually see. There's 3 types of people that go through this. There's the one type that's like super eager to get going. And so they build a prospect list very quickly. And this is before using the AI. I would see them build a list in a day and put their mailing without any thought. They didn't do any checking. They didn't go to make sure like what ads the person's running on Facebook. They don't do any of the checking. They just quickly get it out there and I think speed is the thing. So basically I call them they're not thinking. And then on the other end of that spectrum, I have one student that bless him, I've been working with him for a while. And I think he's now 3 months in and still building like he's overthinking the list building. You can't underthink it. You have to think about it, but you don't want to overthink it. He's been agonizing over like, I don't want to throw him under the bus, but he's been agonizing over every single little detail. And so usually I've got people in this category and this category, but it's the ones who think about it, make some conscious effort to like pick a category. There are so many different like business verticals you can go into that like picking one sometimes gets overwhelming and you just have to like pick a couple and go. So those are probably the biggest mistakes.
Thank you.
You bet. Who else has a question? Let me see. Looks like there's a couple of people that took their mute off. Todd, you have a question? Stephen, Walt, looks, you can just speak up if you have a question. I don't bite.
I have a
Okay.
question.
Yes, go ahead.
Do you have many students in the UK?
I have about half a dozen students in the UK. 2 of them that have followed through and are making it work. The other 4, I think, just gave up. The only challenge you're going to have with working from the UK, well, there's 2 challenges. And by the way, not just the UK. I have some students in Australia. I have one in Germany. There's international students. But the challenge for you is this. I'm not going to teach, I can't teach you anything specific about doing the mailing in your own country because you have different postal rules, you have different postage costs, you have, so the specifics of how to do the thing, the psychology and all that stuff still works. So usually what those folks from other countries are doing outside the US is they're still going after US clients. So here's the challenges, if you will. And I mean, if you can get past them, you can still do it. The challenge is time zone is an issue. So if you're working with a client and they're up at noon their time, and I don't know what time that's going to be for you. What time is it for you right now?
Uh, midnight, 12
Midnight.
midnight.
Right. So it's 5 p.m. here over on the West Coast. Well, I'm not quite to the West Coast, but same thing. So, the time zone is an issue, and you can work around it. If you've ever done any kind of other freelance work with US companies and you've dealt with it, then you probably have no problem. So that's one issue. The second issue is a little bit bigger one, and that is when you're going to do your prospecting, the prospecting letters that we put together to send out require a certain amount of personalization. They're not mass mailing. We're not mailing thousands of them. We're mailing 20, 50, 100 at a time. And they require some personalization. And all that means is it's not, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's not likely that you can find a service in the US that would do that piece of the puzzle for you. And so what I've had students do who were in other countries is they'll put the mailings together themselves, like there in your home country, put them in a box, ship them to me. I'm not going to do it for free, but I'll go out and get the postage, put the postage on them and drop them in the mail for you so you can get it. I'll do that for your first mailing. I'm not going to do that for anything ongoing. So that is sort of the challenge. Though doing the work, yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you are. And it doesn't really matter what like as far as the client work, everything is just being done by an online print mail vendor. So you're good.
Thanks.
Who else has a question? Looks like, so Stacy asked, do we pay for the mailings to get clients? Yes. Yeah, that is a cost for you. You're paying to send out mail to get clients. Got to jump off top of the hour, just exercise, pay the link, he said. Looking forward to getting going. Okay, so anybody that had to leave early, I am going to send this, I'll send this replay out to you so you can go back and watch it. Came in late and we send a replay? Yes. Do you think the 7,500 is too low a price point and should it be raised when charging clients? Lewis, that is a great question. And I will say that that's kind of an advanced question. I do have some clients. I have 2 clients right now that I charged $15,000 for. I just don't like to scare you guys away. It is too low for some clients. It's one of the reasons that we're going after clients with revenue between 1 million and 5 million. If you start dealing, so there's a couple of challenges with dealing with bigger clients. The dealing with bigger clients for me, if it comes as a referral, the only thing that will be a no for me is if they're making it sound like, or I'm getting the feeling that I'm going to have to do everything by committee, because I've done that and I don't want to do that. So if I'm dealing with the decision maker or somebody on their team who I've got an interface with one person, then I can handle that. But when you're doing prospecting, the challenge is getting your prospecting piece into the right hands. If it's a company of 50 people, 100 people, it gets a little bit harder. But I will tell you that you're absolutely right. The bigger the company, you almost have to charge more just to be taken seriously. And I make that judgment call when I'm on the phone with them. If they're reeling off, like, one of them even laughed at me when I said 15,000 because they said, "Oh, that's a drop in the bucket. Our Facebook ad budget is $1 million a month." Like that's a rounding error. So yes, that is a very great question. I can walk you through how to deal with that, but it's usually going to be a matter of who you're prospecting to. If you're prospecting to companies that are in that 1 million to $5 million a year range, the price comes in where it feels like a value, but it doesn't feel like a undercharge to them. What other questions do we have? One of the questions I've had, it's weird. I just thought about this when I was scrolling through this. I would say that I've had probably about 40% of the people who've come through the program so far have been women and 60% have been men, I would say. And it's interesting to see that there's like, when we start to do the building of the lists, it's interesting to see the different perspectives. I mean, maybe it sounds sexist, but it seems like the women have a lot better handle, generally speaking, on the numbers and types of e-commerce companies. And e-commerce companies are ones that are really ripe for this service, especially if you don't want to have to, come up with the actual app. Like they work really good because they have a list available, especially because we're only mailing ones that are selling a certain amount. They have a really good list available. We almost always want them to have at least 4 products. Some of them have hundreds of products, but if they don't have at least 4 products, it's going to be hard because like I've had companies come to me that have like one was a supplement company and they weren't new, but they were a year or 2 old. They had really good sales numbers, but they had 1 product, which meant that the only opportunity for us to do anything with their back end list is to sell them more of what they've already bought or get them back on subscription if they'd left. It leaves the opportunities. There's not that many opportunities. But if you've got an e-commerce company, like for example, I had one in the jewelry space. A, the price points are high. B, the margins are super high. But C, they had hundreds of SKUs. So, somebody that bought earrings, you could sell them a ring. Somebody that bought a ring, you can sell them a bracelet. Like there was like lots of stuff that could be sold to their other customers, which they were already doing with email, and direct mail just made perfect sense to them. Any other questions? If not, I appreciate everybody being here. Thank you for letting me reel this out. Now I have a recording of it. You guys, those of you that had to cut out early or got here late, I'll send you the recording, plus everybody that registered for it. And other than that, I guess have a great evening. I'd love to have you in the program. Love to work with you if it makes sense. Good night, everybody.